the intense rainfall along the boundary and possibility of some flash flooding, or if nothing else, street flooding. At the moment, there are no street flood advisories along this line, but you can get some quick little spin-ups, as we saw over the Laplace area, which I would venture to say, yeah, and they are, well, they're canceling it for St. Charles and continuing it for St. John, as it looks like it's really not a St. Charles issue, as it's kind of right on the edge of the parish line. Yeah, but sometimes where these parishes kind of coincide, it's confusing as to one parish is extended, but another one has been canceled. And it's because of just the way St. Charles and St. John kind of meet right here that it looks like if this tornado is still in play, it is around the Frenier area. But I would venture to say, even just looking at the velocities here, it is more than likely out over the western part of Lake Pontchartrain at this point, and now becomes more of a waterspout issue. And we'll see if that holds together as that line continues moving up toward the causeway. You know, while we're here, we're going to start kind of bringing you up to speed as to what has been happening. We were in a fairly in-depth discussion, and really want to thank a lot of the meteorologists, or all of the meteorologists, but those that got in on this discussion with us, kind of detailing what we had been looking at over the last few hours, some confusion, trying to figure out a few things. We were watching this line of storms as they were racing across southwestern Louisiana about 40 miles an hour. If you were with us during our broadcast at 10 p.m., line started to kind of slow down. It was still moving, but at about 30 miles an hour, and seemed to be slowing down a bit more. Then it all but never stalled, but really came to a crawl from Baton Rouge eastward. Then what we started to see over the last hour plus is that the initial line started to kind of redevelop farther west and intensify. What had been happening was the upper energy off to the west was in a position where it was allowing the line to slow down and weaken. What then started to happen as that energy started to push to the east, we started to see the line move, or then start redeveloping and intensifying. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. We want this line to get in and out of here, but while it was getting out of here, it was starting to refire up. Did bring in a risk of severe storms that had been mainly in coastal Mississippi, but even right along this line, something we talk about a lot with these squall lines, it's not only the cells that develop out ahead of it, but right along that boundary, you'll get enough wind shear that you will get up kind of a quick spin, and that possibility of a tornado sometimes very quickly, almost as fast as a warning is issued, the tornado threat is already out of maybe the area where the warning had been for. And as a matter of fact, the canceling the tornado warning, any rotation is already over Lake Pontchartrain and is likely now a water spout. So one thing I will note is that the line is moving, albeit painfully slow, it is moving. We're going to be monitoring this throughout the course of the night. As I said, I'm not going anywhere until this threat is completely done. For southeast Louisiana, with the exception of maybe some of these quick little spin-ups, I think more of the issue will be some of the initial heavy rain downpours. That could lead to some, hopefully nothing more than just minor street flooding. Thus far, we've not really had too many flooding issues along this line. They have been moving, and some of the rainfall rates along this boundary have been manageable. Most of them, with the exception of a few areas, have been in the 1 to 2 inches, a few pockets of maybe 2 to 4 inches of rainfall, but at least the line is moving. So a lot of folks have been asking, as the line moves, how long is it going to sit over the city of New Orleans? Difficult to say. The line at least is now making some forward progress. So I'm hoping not much more than maybe 30 minutes or so. We'll be getting in on that soon, but not at the moment. At the moment, we are still relatively dry. Something to note, though, is that the winds are still pretty brisk outside, and what we call gradient winds, not necessarily associated with the thunderstorms themselves, but just the nature of this system that has been developing, that we still do have some very strong winds as they're starting to come in now. Ground is saturated from our earlier rainfall this morning and afternoon, and with the addition of maybe another couple of inches of rainfall through the night, and you couple that with the strong winds, you've saturated the soil. It is possible that we see more overturned trees or uprooted trees as we go through the course of the night and into, well, now into the early morning hours. Here we are at 1:01 in the morning. You can see where the front has already cleared. Gonzales Corvallis winds out of the northwest, northwest at Hammond, north at Macomb, still out of the south or a southerly component, Bogalusa elsewhere. So where the line has passed and where we can kind of give you the all clear as folks are probably just wanting to go to bed. Let's see, new severe thunderstorm warning for Terrebonne. Again, that's something that can be dealt with some strong winds. But as I've said many times in my, 20 years of broadcasting, sometimes it doesn't matter if it was straight line winds or tornado. Damage is damage when you go to assess it the next day. So some strong winds, hopefully nothing rotating from the line, but now southern, the rest of us should say Lafourche and or another big portion of Lafourche and kind of the rest of Terrebonne now included in the warning area. But this is for the severe thunderstorm with the winds at times gusting at about 60 miles an hour, or sustained winds, I should say, of 60 miles an hour. Also a new severe warning being issued for eastern Washington as the line is kind of intensifying a bit. And they're also mentioning, and I say they, the Weather Service folks, as they're really analyzing these storms very quickly, is that there is the possibility there's a little bit of broad rotation, and so the possibility of maybe a quick tornado developing in these storms rolling through Washington Parish right now. At least they are moving, as we kind of saw that line solidify over Bogalusa toward Covington and maybe Beatico. At least it is moving, and that line needs to continue moving in order for more and more of our parishes to kind of get that all clear. So I started to tell you where the all clear is. Most of Tangi is in the all clear. Central Franklinton toward western Washington Parish, you're in the all clear. Not quite there yet for St. Tammany. We're still getting it on the rainfall there at the moment, and certainly not Metro New Orleans. We haven't even gotten into the thunderstorms yet, and down south. So anything from the line of storms east is still in play for the potential of severe weather. From the line west, you're done. You can go to bed. The threat is over. You can settle down. And again, it'll be far nicer tomorrow with colder, drier air starting to move on in. We will continue to monitor these storms throughout the night. I will cut into programming if necessary. I was kind of in the middle of doing a detailed discussion on Instagram. We'll be updating social media throughout the night tonight. Hopefully nothing more than a couple more hours, and then we're in the clear and folks can then go to bed and wake up with a much quieter Tuesday. Next rain chance will be Friday, but we are in store for some more Arctic air looking forward once we are done with our severe threat for today. For right now, though, we'll continue to monitor that line. I will cut into programming if necessary, but otherwise I'm going to end things here. I'm going to continue updating on my social media accounts, Facebook, Instagram. I did something on TikTok a minute ago. I think it posted issuing severe thunderstorm warning. So really almost all along this line now we have a new severe thunderstorm warning issued. Basically along this entire line is the risk of some small hail. That really didn't appear to be too much of an issue with these storms. More than anything, the strong sustained winds of 60 miles an hour, and sustained winds and straight line winds can easily do damage just as much as a weak tornado could. Doesn't look like a strong tornado risk from these storms. May continue almost now as you watch a lot of these cells developing. Let me kind of move my map over here a little bit. For our coastal Mississippi counties, a lot of that threat is now more so over Jackson County and now into Mobile and eventually Baldwin County. South Mississippi, or excuse me, South Alabama, the Florida Panhandle still very much under the risk of this through the course of the night tonight, as they have a far more unstable atmosphere as this squall line pushes through. So we'll likely wake up with numerous damage reports along much of the Gulf Coast as we continue through the night. For southeast Louisiana, not done, but still those ongoing thunderstorms. For coastal Mississippi, I think a little bit more within some of these cells that we could see become tornadic, but it's going to be more so Jackson County and then into lower Alabama. So I'm going to wrap things up for now. I'll be updating things on social media, and of course you're going to get a complete update on WWL Louisiana News starting at 4:30.
This has been a severe weather alert from WWL Weather, sponsored by Egan Insurance Agency.
And good morning again, Chief Meteorologist Chris Franklin here. Just wanted to update folks as some of that lightning thunder starting to move into the metro area, and I think probably a lot of folks waking up, maybe putting their phone on, turning the TV on, wondering, all right, now we're hearing what's going on. I know a lot of folks can't sleep comfortably until the threat is over, and believe me, I understand. But here's what we have going on. The main threat along the line, first is the strong winds. Right along basically the entirety of this line, which thankfully is now moving, is at about 60 miles an hour. And you see all the areas highlighted in the severe thunderstorm warnings, really with the exception of the metro area, which will be shortly there, probably issuing another warning. That is the main threat along that line. We did early, if you were with us, at about maybe just before 1 a.m., briefly had a tornado warning for Laplace. It was quick. I mean, it was very quick, almost as fast as the warning was issued. It was moving away from Laplace, and then that storm was out over the western part of the lake, and the warning, and then the threat was done. Really, the ongoing threat will be the winds, secondary to that from heavy rainfall. Thankfully, the line is moving as it became a little bit better established over about an hour ago. It finally started to move. So as long as it continues with that eastward projected trajectory, we won't see great deal of rain accumulation. One thing that we may have to watch for, and something that was pointed out, is that with the heavy rainfall that we saw earlier in the afternoon and now the ongoing heavy rainfall and strong sustained winds, we could see a number of uprooted trees before this line is completely done. Where can we sound the all clear? That's what I think a lot of folks want to know. Where can I go to bed? All right. Tangi, I think you're just about completely in the clear, with maybe the exception of extreme southeastern, more toward like the Beatico, Madison Village. You're now into St. Tammany Parish and Mandeville. That's where we have the ongoing thunderstorms. But almost all of Tangi, you are done. From Franklinton west, you are clear as well in Washington Parish, still ongoing from Angie to Bogalusa, and then down through central and eastern St. Tammany Parish. Obviously, we're not done yet in our Mississippi counties as the storms are just starting to push through Pearl River County. Let's move a little bit farther south where we have that rainfall moving into now western Jefferson Parish, and now a new severe thunderstorm warning, as I said, we have across the entirety of the metro area. Mainly the threat from the strong winds with that leading edge. Thankfully, it is moving, so I don't believe we're going to pick up a whole lot of rainfall. Maybe the typical areas, kind of the usual suspects, those areas that always tend to see the standing water from a heavy downpour, but at least it is a moving line. May pick up an inch or thereabouts, but with the progression of this now moving fairly quickly, finally we started to see that forward speed of the line pick up a bit. We shouldn't see a great deal of accumulation. So Metro New Orleans, we're getting on the lightning again. Really the only thing severe is going to be the strong winds. And I don't want to downplay that. I know obviously as far as the severe criteria go, we always put tornadoes at /1, but secondary is definitely strong winds. 60-mile-an-hour winds can do some significant damage, and sometimes straight line winds will do just as much or sometimes even more than a tornado. And so the gusty winds with this, and that usually is what tends to wake people up. Maybe the thunder, yes, but more than anything, when you start hearing things kind of blowing around outside of your home or apartments, that's usually when folks kind of wake up and start to pay attention. Moving through the Luling area, rest of the river parishes and St. Charles Parish now, but quickly moving into the metro area and will be moving in and out fairly quickly. So I even mentioned maybe it would sit for about a half hour. I don't think it's going to be that long. I think with this line now moving, it won't stay there for very long. We're starting to see the clearing from, say, Raceland, Thibodaux. Folks that want to know where we can go to bed and kind of breathe that sigh of relief, Homa, Thibodaux, you are now in the clear. As long as you are west of the line, the severe risk for you is done. There is no longer a severe risk in those areas. Everyone along that line and east, we will have that ongoing severe threat for the next, say, hour or so. What I want to do is see if our computer model is doing a better job of where that line is. Right now, it's a little bit more east of where the actual line is, so just kind of keep that in mind. This line is actually a little bit more east in reality than where the model is indicating. But notice as we go through the next, say, hour or so, As you head toward after 3, 4, all of our Mississippi counties are done. May still have some ongoing thunderstorms right near the mouth of the river, but within the next certainly hour to maybe hour and a half, I think the bulk of the threatening weather will already be gone from our area, as the line has now started to pick up that forward progress, and we are starting to see it finally move. It had been kind of a painful forward motion when it got to about Baton Rouge, started to stall and almost fall apart. I've been posting kind of just following radar trends, and we started to see this line stall and fall apart. What was happening was the upper energy was kind of stalling out and not really allowing the line, the front, to move or to kind of keep going with those thunderstorms. Once we started to see that line move, we started to see it kind of reignite with those thunderstorms at times. So it was kind of a double-edged sword. We finally started to see the line moving, but we also started to see it kind of reignite. We do have one of our sky cameras looking out over the city, and obviously the lightning now starting. We've got the wind from our tower. Our tower camera, I believe, is 500 feet up in the air on our transmitter, so obviously feeling those strong winds. And we do, I don't know if we have access to it, we have had a number of power outages being reported, obviously from some of these stronger winds on, wow, that was a big one. Seemed like it was kind of close to our transmitter there. A lot of lightning now starting to move into the area. It looks like, as far as the energy goes for most of the metro area, East and West Bank, doesn't appear as though we have any power outages, but keep in mind the line of those strong thunderstorms are just now moving into western Jefferson Parish. So we're not yet seeing those power outages, but with those strong winds of 60 miles an hour, we know, unfortunately, how easy it is to start seeing those power lines coming down, and especially if we have any overturned trees or tree limbs coming down on what has now been kind of saturated with the strong winds. It wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility to start seeing more widespread power outages. I know we did have some reports in parts of the river parishes such as Hahnville, and even beyond that, a little bit of power outage, a few power outages coming in. It looks like the numbers maybe on the West Bank, not dramatic. Thankfully, it doesn't look like the power outages are very substantial, but certainly we will start to see those numbers likely increasing over the course of the next couple of hours. And as I said, especially in the metro area with those storms just now arriving, we'll likely start to see those power outage numbers coming up. Hopefully not a widespread issue. As far as the kind of ongoing threat goes, really along this entire line from almost Hattiesburg at the top of our map here, all the way down to the coast, it is a solid line of severe thunderstorms. The main threat being those strong gusty winds. I would say secondary, maybe some street flooding, some road hazards if you're on the roadway or maybe going early to work. A lot of folks work early in the morning. If you're going to be hitting the roadways, maybe just give yourself a little bit of time, let this line pass across the metro area, pass through the North Shore, and then maybe you can kind of venture out on the roadways, but just be cautious of wet roads certainly, and then any standing water, as we've already added to the totals from earlier this afternoon to these totals now. Thankfully, though, we did see kind of that break later in the earlier this evening or earlier yesterday evening from some of the heavier rainfall. So we are starting to get a little bit of a break from the more we got a break from the more intense rainfall, and now have started to see that kind of reactivate. I'm also monitoring the Weather Service, our chat group, because we're also in with a lot of emergency officials, emergency management officials, law enforcement, and they will report any damage that they are getting or any eyewitness reports that they are receiving. They'll usually be quick to kind of relay that to the Weather Service, and I'm not seeing anything. And hopefully the damage reports from later on to this morning are minimal or non-existent. I know we did have some reports from earlier clusters of thunderstorms of some trees damaged and even some would look to be maybe wind damage, possibly a tornado. As a matter of fact, Weather Service in their discussion said they may be sending out a crew a little bit later in the day to investigate that possible tornado. At the moment, still calling it a possible tornado in Labadeville. They may be going out to investigate that a little bit later on today. When this line kind of moves through and things settle down during daylight hours, they may send a crew out there. So again, just want to kind of final update here as we approach the now 1:30 time. Line of storms still ongoing. Note they're outside of our viewing area, but around the Hattiesburg, around Hattiesburg, there is a tornado warning there. So even right along this line, you can get kind of a quick spin up tornado. That's exactly what we saw in Laplace. Speaking of Laplace, you're in the clear now. Storms are to your east. You can go to bed safely and know that the threat is done. Hammond, now all of Tangi is in the clear. Just about all of Washington Parish, right along the state line. Still some ongoing thunderstorms there, but shortly you will be able to just head to bed and know that the threat is over. Still an issue through central St. Tammany, moving toward eastern St. Tammany. We've got the intense thunderstorms over the Mandeville area right now, continuing into Jefferson with the strong winds, frequent lightning, heavy rainfall, and that continues down toward now central Lafourche and almost entirely out of Terrebonne Parish, with the exception of, say, near Cocodrie and Chauvin. We still have that threat ongoing, but that is quickly moving on out. So really the continued threat through the night, and again, we will cut into programming if necessary with a tornado warning. And again, it's not out of the realm of possibilities. Always need to put that mention in there that within these kind of strong squall lines, sometimes it doesn't take much. And we have also been mentioning the atmosphere that we're in was a little bit more indicative of strong wind shear, where you can kind of quickly get that rotation along the line or ahead of it. Storms ahead of the line really wasn't as much of an issue in southeast Louisiana as it is in coastal Mississippi. What we were going to be watching more was right along that line, and sure enough, we saw that briefly in Laplace about a half hour ago, and right now up toward Hattiesburg. So that's what we'll watch as the line quickly moves on through. But before we wrap things up, just want to check real quick with the folks out at the Weather Service who have been analyzing these storms, and also want to look at the velocities now moving into the city. Nothing that's showing up as rotation, certainly some very strong winds along that leading edge, now moving into western Jefferson Parish, northern east bank of Jefferson Parish, I should say. There's kind of the leading edge as we look at the velocities here. Those are the strong winds. So that is right at the leading edge. So we're getting those strong winds there right now. That continues up onto the continues up on the North Shore and elsewhere with these storms, as they are at least now moving. So we'll be watching that closely. Really, the only thing I would see necessary for cutting back into programming would be is if we do have another quick spin-up tornado warning, which hopefully will not be an issue. I will continue to monitor this off air and update social media through the course of the next couple of hours or so. And of course, we're going to have a complete wrap up of the weather. Again, as a lot of folks are waking up in the next few hours as we begin WW Louisiana at 4:30. Storms will be gone, but we'll have kind of a complete wrap up and a look at what sunlight, daylight may bring as far as any, and hopefully minimal damage from our 2 rounds of severe weather Monday and now early on Tuesday. For now, again, we'll cut in if necessary. I'm Chief Meteorologist Chris Franklin.
This has been a severe weather alert from WWL Weather, sponsored by Egan Insurance Agency.
Now to depend more on
Orleans probably awake or wondering what is going on with the line of storms rolling on through. It has arrived over most now of Metro New Orleans, certainly heaviest over Jefferson Parish, but continuing toward the metro area down to our south and north. So we're kind of surrounded now by the frequent lightning, heavy rainfall, and also some strong winds sustained at 60 miles an hour. So we will maintain that severe thunderstorm warning until we're kind of in the clear. And as you watch just off to the west, right at almost the St. Charles Jefferson line, are we about in the clear. So things settling down from Luling to Zalman's, Raceland, and areas west. So things finally starting to improve there. We still have the strong winds and lightning that are moving across the metro area, and we'll extend that down to the coast as well as farther north. North Shore getting rattled by these storms, and also had a flash flood warning from the line of storms that had been from basically Angie all the way to the lake at Mandeville, Madisonville, Beatico, with those heavier downpours. Now, a lot of that rain has already moved out of the warned area, but those warnings usually stay up for a little bit longer to allow for any kind of natural drainage. Also notice often some of our Mississippi counties, we do have some street flood advisories from what those have been more individual cells moving on through, whereas this has been not quite exactly a training of the showers and storms because the line is at least moving to the east. It's been more of kind of a sustained heavier rainfall, and with coupled the heavier rains that we saw earlier in the day, that could lead to some additional flooding concerns, and something that will have to be watched for on the North Shore. But again, at least in those warned areas, the heavier rainfall has since moved on out. Main threat from these storms, really from the entire line, with the exception of maybe an isolated little quick tornadic spin up along the line, as we've seen just a couple of times, thankfully, is mainly the strong winds. 60 miles an hour sustained winds will cause some widespread damage, and something that has to be watched very closely as the line pushes on through. Hopefully we don't have any damage reports, but I would venture to say we probably will have some by the time we hit daybreak early tomorrow. And the lightning show has been real intense, and that has probably, that coupled with the strong winds outside of a lot of people's homes, probably what is maybe waking up some folks, or at least getting you to put your phone on and try and figure out what is happening at the moment. So the storm is rolling through the metro area right now with very strong winds sustained at about 60 miles an hour. Let's see, we're getting from EM, maybe a little bit of storm damage up in Abita, nursery off of Highway 36. So within some of the strong, with the strong winds that I've said, it's certainly very likely that we will see more storm damage reports as we approach daybreak. And certainly through the night and getting toward daybreak early in the morning. But as of right now, have not had too many reports of that having happened, and thankfully not much more through the next say hour or so. Where we did have noticed still some ongoing tornadic storms kind of developing and then moving eastward off of Hattiesburg, and those will continue almost toward now the Mississippi, the Alabama state line, as that line continues moving up toward more to the north and east. But otherwise, the line that we have seen had that earlier at about 1 a.m. Brief kind of spin up around the Laplace area, didn't last for very long, was moving so quickly that it almost, by the time the warning comes out, it's already almost away from Laplace and moving out toward the western part of Lake Pontchartrain. So if there is any kind of a little spin up along this line over the next hour or so, it is not going to last for very long, and usually embedded within some very heavy rainfall. And so sometimes within the rainfall and the strong gusty winds, if there was maybe a brief tornado, sometimes it's hard for the National Weather Service to figure out if it was straight line wind damage or from a tornado once these type of squall lines have already passed on through. Notice how new warnings are continuing to be issued farther to the east as this line quickly moves to the east. So we now have more of southern Jefferson Parish moving now into Plaquemines and parts of St. Bernard. St. Bernard, though, is also included in this warning that includes the metro area onto the North Shore and into Mississippi, parts of Hancock County and into Pearl River County, all now under severe thunderstorm warnings. That will continue to be the case until this line has already passed on through. So the new warning that was just issued here and also warnings that are being expired almost as fast as the warning is issued. Some of these warnings are expiring because thankfully the line is moving, which is why it doesn't look like this is going to be really an ongoing flooding risk for the city, thankfully. It looks like it's going to be, and really we were spared from much of the heavier rainfall earlier in the day. If you go back in time to about 4 o'clock earlier yesterday afternoon, had that complex of storms that rolled across starting in around Labadyville, where, as I'd mentioned before, Weather Service is going to investigate to see if that was indeed a tornado, but it continued along the river parishes, then kind of took a path taking it over the lake. It actually for a while had closed the causeway. This is going back to the storm that was in the earlier afternoon hours. Then as it continued into St. Tammany Parish, had a number of reports of some damage there, and still was really holding together while weaker, but still holding on as it pushed across southern Mississippi and was moving into Alabama. So a fairly long duration, fairly heavy cell that continued for most of the afternoon. My point of all of that is, long story short, it really avoided the city. So the city has not had the heavier rains that we saw earlier in St. Tammany Parish, and which is why the rainfall rates are roughly the same on both sides of the lake. I can show you what those rainfall rates are right now. The fact that we had the heavier rains on the North Shore earlier is why that flash flood warning was issued, and we don't see the flash flood warning for the metro area. But taking a look at the metro area rainfall rates, they're in excess, widespread, of about 1 to 2 inches per hour. The line is moving, so they're not just sitting, so we're not going to see those type of accumulations. However, we also have some isolated within that, or maybe even scattered within that, kind of 2 to 4 inches per hour. Those type of rainfall rates may warrant street flood advisory. I don't see one coming out from the Weather Service right now, but certainly something that would be very possible. And even if there is not a warning within some of these heavier downpours, there is still certainly that possibility. Okay, we're actually getting messages of hail in Elmwood. That's not too far from where I live. So let's go to the storm itself over, but it's an intense storm. And actually we have a hail detector. And we're getting, yeah, we could easily see along that line kind of pea-size hail, maybe some larger areas around Lake Salvador as you go farther south into St. Charles Parish, but certainly along almost the entire line. What we're doing is this is our hail tracker, and really what's indicating is that along that entire line there is the chance of hail, and we're getting some confirmed in the Elmwood area of Jefferson Parish, so not far from Old Jefferson, River Ridge, Harahan. A little bit of hail being reported there. So within these storms, there have been some small hail. Didn't really have too many large hail reports, at least as the storms have been moving into southeastern Louisiana. So some good news there, as all the other severe weather probabilities or possibilities were certainly potential. Hail has been, while a number of reports have all been fairly small, at least the reports that I've seen coming into both the Weather Service office and to WW Louisiana, we have had so far kind of smaller hail reports. But want to zoom in on some of those storms that are over the Elmwood area. That's pretty intense rainfall. So if it wasn't the lightning, if it wasn't the wind, then it's probably the intense rain that is waking a lot of folks up early this morning as this line is pushing through. I got to say, going back to our computer models and sometimes how they're not perfectly on with maybe a few hours one way or the other, it's been interesting to watch this line evolve with regards to how it was forecasted by our computer models. Computer models, if you were with us at the earlier newscast and even as recent as our 10 p.m. newscast, it kind of had that solid line moving east and then starting to kind of fall apart a bit and then starting to re-intensify. And while it may not have done it exactly where it was being forecasted to do, that's exactly what happened. This had been a solid line of storms rolling across south central Louisiana, started to slow down and almost fall apart a bit as it was over the Baton Rouge area and areas just to our west. Then as we started to see that upper energy kind of get its act together, the line began moving once again, started to kind of fill in a bit and reignite, and we started to see those storms become again borderline severe, and that is exactly what has happened. Although with that being said, the models indicated this would be more to our east by that time as opposed to it being right over the metro area. However, models did a pretty good job of forecasting this, and sometimes the placement of those type of squall lines or even complexes of storms, individual cells, the computer models will have a tough time of maybe forecasting that perfectly in the future, even in the near future. But I will say that the models did a fairly decent job forecasting for this. As I was just talking about some of the rainfall rates, we now have a street flood advisory that is for parts of Jefferson, Plaquemine, St. Bernard, and Orleans. That will be in play until, let's see, that's not the flash flood. I'm looking for the information on our flood advisory here. Flood advisory for all of those mentioned parishes that are in effect until about 3:45 early this morning. So even as the rainfall obviously will be long gone before almost 4 o'clock in the morning, where we have had the heavy downpours, I would just be cautious, especially if you're going to be out on the roadways in the next couple of hours. I would just be cautious of any of the low-lying areas, some of the areas that are the usual suspects for any kind of street flooding. From these downpours, we will likely see, and usually a street flood advisory is nothing more than nuisance type flooding, not really an imminent danger, although it's some of our roadways, if you're parked on it, it can be kind of an imminent danger within these individual cells. Seldom, or the line itself is still holding strong, so it doesn't look like there is any sign of it weakening as it continues eastward, eventually into further into coastal Mississippi. So we'll see more of these warnings issued along the northern end of the line as it almost entirely out now of Washington Parish. So, you know, giving a few more folks the all clear. Again, Tangi all clear. Washington Parish all clear, just about through central now Pearl River County, starting to move into Hancock, not quite all the way through St. Tammany Parish. We're starting to see some improving weather across all of the river parishes. Metro New Orleans, Jefferson Parish on the east bank still ongoing, west bank of Jefferson Parish and Orleans Parish still ongoing, and this line extends down to Galliano and just into the Gulf water. So still an ongoing threat for many of our parishes, but also probably just as many. We're already seeing the improving weather. So where we can kind of give you that all clear, everywhere that the rain has since moved on through, there is no longer a severe threat. You can put your head down on the pillow and go to bed because that severe threat is done for the rest of the night. And for many more of us, as we approach the 2 o'clock hour, more of these storms will be clearing out. Looks like maybe right along the Jefferson St. Charles line, starting to see some clearing, so we can kind of start to put our heads down maybe in parts of Kenner, especially out along the lakefront, South Kenner toward the river. You're just about done with it now. We got the intense rainfall through River Ridge, Harahan, Old Jefferson, Metairie, the rest of the city, but the line is at least quickly moving on through. So not much longer will that be an ongoing threat. And as you see down here, new tornado warning has just been issued. So this is for Jean Lafitte. Let's switch over to our velocities and take a look at where we are looking at right now. And it looks like that is, sometimes we get a little flash of lightning here, my screen goes to black. But the new tornado warning that has just been issued, let's see, this is for Jefferson, Plaquemines, and St. Bernard. And I'm just trying to read here what my computer is saying. This will be in effect until 2:30 or until the rotation is gone. It will be near Jean Lafitte and Belle Chase at around 1:55. So really in the next 4 minutes, as I'd mentioned, almost as fast as these warnings are issued for a particular neighborhood, town, city, almost just as fast the warning or the storm has already, the tornado has already moved on through. So moving kind of in the direction, you see kind of a almost broad area of rotation right in through here, kind of right there over Jean Lafitte, and again, Belle Chase maybe closely on its heels. or the storm may be closely on the heels of Belle Chase. So for folks in Belle Chase, Jean Lafitte, I would also venture to say Poydras if the storm kind of moves in that direction, down toward Carlisle. These are the areas where you need to seek that tornado safe space immediately. This will be a very quick spin up type tornado. You're not going to see it just slowly meander. These storms have been moving very, very quickly with the line itself, which the line itself has been moving very quickly. So kind of reading the details from it. The severe thunderstorm that we have been tracking is now capable of producing a tornado, which would be right around Jean Lafitte, or about 9 miles southwest of Belle Chase, and it is moving east at 55 miles an hour. So it is booking it toward the east. Debris is certainly possible, and in these areas from Jean Lafitte to Belle Chase, I would include Carlisle. If it does continue toward Poydras, Delacroix, you need to get into that tornado safe space immediately, as centrally located of a room as you possibly can as this tornado passes in your direction, and again, very quickly. And as I was also just showing you on the reflectivity as that warning came out, you got an area that is very much embedded with some very intense rainfall. So you're not going to see this coming if a lot of folks think, oh, I'll see it or I'll hear it. You've got intense rainfall, lightning, thunder, and strong winds, as well as the possibility of a tornado within this storm. So something that you need to take very seriously, as it really looks like kind of that rotation moving very quickly, almost as fast as the radar beam passes through and we get a new image here. That reflectivity couplet kind of jumps a bit. To me, it looks a little bit more just like the leading edge of the thunderstorms. I don't want to discredit the warning itself, but it really does look more or less like the initial leading edge of the line of thunderstorms pushing east than necessarily a couplet. However, radar has algorithms that are able to start kind of detecting rotation, and we've seen that these storms have had a history of doing some damage, had a history of kind of these quick spin-ups. So something that needs to be monitored very closely as we go through the next 5-10 minutes or so with this storm moving to the east at 55 miles an hour. If there's any positive, is that as it moves away from the town of Jean Lafitte, you're really in an unpopulated area of the marsh, say to the north of Carlisle and south of Poydras, even south of Belle Chase. So not really talking about too many communities that would be impacted along this as it moves toward the river. However, with Jesuit Bend and elsewhere, you do have some communities right along the river. So where it is at the moment, kind of beyond Crown Point, kind of in the clear, but that will continue toward Oakville, Live Oak, Gloria, as I mentioned, Jesuit Bend. That will be on you very shortly. So this is when you need to take shelter and get into that centrally located part of your home. One, preferably without any exterior walls or any windows. That is where you need to be right now. We're also getting some wind damage reports that are coming in. A tree uprooted and fell over on a structure, causing some damage near Highway 36. This is one I mentioned earlier in Abita Springs. So just some, initial storm damage report beginning to come in now around Abita Springs. We have that report, and getting further reports on the ongoing, let's see, about the severe thunderstorm warning for the North Shore becoming a little bit more disorganized. At least a portion of it will be allowed to expire shortly. So kind of some updates on a few of our warnings here. And again, okay, we're getting reports about 2,200 people in Orleans Parish without power. We're going to continue to monitor this possible tornado around Jean Lafitte, but also notice, again, this is kind of in the leading edge of some very intense rainfall. And with that intense rainfall over now almost entirely over New Orleans, just about Metairie, toward the 17th Street Canal, we can kind of breathe that sigh of relief shortly as the strongest of the storms are just about out of East Jefferson as they continue to the east. Still ongoing in Orleans Parish, and with those intense winds, lightning, not a surprise to hear, again, 2,200 without power from Entergy in Orleans Parish. We'll probably hear of more. We'll continue to monitor this possible tornado that is down in Jean Lafitte. I'm going to look at our rotation indicator and see if anything is popping up. Nothing's popping up right around the warned area per se. There appears to be some kind of little spot of rotation near Delacroix right now, but nothing that is popping up kind of over the Jean Lafitte area. So obviously something that will be monitored, that we will continue to watch as it moves toward the Jesuit Bend area and then eventually crosses the river and continues more out over the toward the Biloxi Marsh as that storm continues moving very quickly. Portion of the line, let's see, with the tornado didn't wrap up, mostly damaging winds. We'll hold for a few more scans to see, but it looks like the threat for tornado is low. Okay, so I'm passing along with the Weather Service folks, and I will say their meteorologists are fantastic with letting us know what their thinking is and why they issue the warnings and if they're going to allow something to possibly expire. Again, he's going to wait for a few more passes of the radar beam to get some better detailed information. And if it still looks like what would be, it had been maybe a tornado earlier, is no longer and fairly weak, they're going to expire this tornado warning possibly in the next couple of scans here. So we'll kind of move on from that one and analyze the line as it moves through almost now out of Jefferson Parish, or at least East Jefferson, and continues now into Orleans Parish. So folks from Kenner to Metairie and to the West Bank can kind of breathe that sigh of relief. Down the parish a little bit, Jean Lafitte, you're still ongoing with these thunderstorms, and notice as you head to the farthest end of that line, not really much of anything toward Leeville, Port Fourchon, and Lafourche, and Grand Isle probably going to get go unscathed. This line doesn't extend very far south toward the Gulf waters, so a little bit more potent in the metro area, and certainly as it continues up onto the North Shore. But again, a lot of that severe threat is a little bit more north of the coast. So finally, even a little bit of good news for the folks in Grand Isle that usually seem to get kind of sucker punched with some of these storms as they roll through. Thankfully, not as bad down near the coast. All of Washington is in the clear now, so you can kind of head to bed for folks in St. Tammany Parish. From Tallahassee towards Slidell, still ongoing. Looks like it's kind of wrapping up around Abita, and then beginning or continuing to wrap up from Mandeville, still ongoing around the Lacombe to Slidell area. So rather shortly you'll be able to head off to bed, and again just waiting for the all clear on this tornado warning down, now moving well away from Jean Lafitte, and more so now into northern Plaquemines Parish and then towards St. Bernard Parish, waiting to see if we kind of get the all clear from that storm as well. I can definitely give you the all clear again across Metairie, East Jefferson, as that line continues pushing quickly toward the east. I'm going to switch back over to the velocities just to see if there's anything that shows up. Aside from what we're looking at here is the leading edge. Again, this is the radar site that is out over Norco from the airport. So we're looking at the winds that are moving away and winds that are still moving toward, but the winds moving away, what I was showing you is kind of the leading edge of the squall line itself. Now where you see this little leading edge and these kind of colors kind of overtop each other, that indicates the rotation. There may have been some indications of that earlier when the warning was issued, but even what the Weather Service is saying, okay, he's trimming Jefferson out of the tornado warning. Obviously, as I just mentioned, it's now more of a Plaquemines and St. Bernard. But if it's even to the west of the, or excuse me, to the east of the river now, almost to the east of the river now, you can probably rule out a lot of our river communities from being impacted. Still some strong winds. Again, I don't want to downplay the winds with these storms, but certainly the threat of the tornado would be moving away from our the communities along the river with the storm in Plaquemines Parish. And so some changes in the warning as Jefferson Parish is now being completely removed from that warning as it is now well past Jean Lafitte. Although in Jean Lafitte you still have some fairly healthy thunderstorms rolling on through and some very gusty winds that have continued. As far as Orleans Parish, starting to clear out across the river bend along the 17th Street Canal. Weather Service, they're going to continue the tornado warning for Plaquemines and St. Bernard. The warning actually extends until 2:30, but that it's moving away from the those river communities and Plaquemines. The real threat for any populated areas is quickly coming to an end. We'll switch back over to the velocity just to kind of reanalyze that storm. Again, it's kind of the leading edge right here. And as that moves away from most of those areas, I think the threat is kind of winding down. Certainly, again, Jesuit Bend, Bel Air toward Carlisle. Just get into that tornado safe space or be in that tornado safe space for a little while longer. We'll wait for this threat to move on, and then the threat will be gone for you, and it will be moving more into the Biloxi Marsh, and kind of any threat to land area or populated areas will be winding down. So switching back over to our reflectivity, showing you where we can get kind of the all clear for parts of Orleans Parish. Uptown, Riverbend, you are in the clear now. Good part of the city from City Park and around the not quite Lake Terrace area, UNO still under the heavy rainfall, but the severe threat is mainly along that line and east. So while you're kind of under the western end of the line per se, things there are starting to settle down. So a good portion of the metro area now starting to see that threat wind down as the line continues moving off toward the east, as is a good portion of the North Shore as the storm continues. Now over Slidell, moving toward Pearlington. Looks like a new flash flood warning issued for that portion of the line into Pearl River County, extending to parts of Hancock and then into St. Tammany. But again, these are areas that had been inundated with heavier rainfall earlier in the day today, whereas we didn't see those kind of inundations over the city, which is why we had more of a street flood advisory over the city and a flash flood warning for the North Shore, because we've already had some decent rain accumulations there from yesterday, now at 2 a.m. These were all from yesterday. I just want to kind of read again what the Weather Service is saying, and I apologize for kind of leaning over here to see my other computer screen. You know, they're still saying that they're seeing that rotation on radar. I'm not really seeing it all that well defined, so we'll keep that mention in, but as it looks like, even switching over to the velocities, that the leading edge is pretty much past most of these communities, with the exception of the Phillips 66 refinery in Carlisle. The leading edge is just about already past. That would be where we would have any potential rotation, would be right along this leading edge here. With that now gone, I don't, right here is the leading edge I'm pointing out. Really with that having kind of moved away from a lot of our communities right along the river, really the tornadic threat is done for any of the populated areas. It is now moving out over the marshier areas. So and actually it looks like they might have just expired that warning. Let me see here. Tornado. Go ahead to cancel the tornado, but be aware severe threat continues, and the potential of a quick spin-up tornado is certainly possible. We've been saying that all morning long now along this leading edge, that was certainly going to be a potential with the line of storms as these continue moving very quickly toward the east. So just listening here on our rooftop, we're starting to see or hear the rainfall and see it kind of come to an end here in the French Quarter. Just about clear in the lower 9 and Bywater, still ongoing, and Chalmette and up toward New Orleans East, Michoud, but that is quickly coming to an end. Heavier rainfall now out of Terrytown, Chalmette still ongoing, but quickly moving out. Same down toward Belle Chase. You have the heavy thunderstorms around Crown Point, but anything again on the more eastern side of this leading edge is where the ongoing threat for the strongest of the winds and the possibility of some brief kind of spin-up tornadoes are possible. Most of that is now pushing away from the metro area. We'll continue to watch this as the line continues into Pearl River as well as Hancock County, Mississippi. But otherwise, I think even that threat is coming to an end. And hopefully a lot of folks now in the metro area, with the exception of Chalmette and up toward New Orleans East down into Belle Chase, you can finally put your head on your pillow as the thunderstorms are moving on. Of course, unless you lost power, then that's a different story, and you'll have to 3,000 now out in Orleans. I want to switch over to our temperature map to show you clearly see where the front has already passed through. We're down to 58 degrees at Lakefront, 59 right now at Kenner. And some of these temperatures may be about as warm as we're going to get during the day as even colder air starts moving in, and the temperatures may kind of balance out. I think we're going to stay in the 50s throughout the day on Tuesday. Note still 73 degrees at Belle Chase, so the front not quite up, just dropped. But it's always neat when you watch the real-time weather information come in. They're down now to 59 degrees, so they are now in a more stable atmosphere, which means a severe threat for them has come to an end, as it has for many other locations across southeast Louisiana. So as we kind of watch the remnants or the last of this line pushing through our Mississippi counties and kind of the last of it into northern Plaquemines and further into St. Bernard Parish, we will cut into programming if necessary. I am running out of my voice here, so we're going to wrap things up, cutting in if necessary. Several additional parts of the warnings are being canceled as the line continues pushing to the east. So with the exception of some of our eastern parishes and Mississippi counties, with some of those ongoing thunderstorms, a severe risk for many of us are starting to come to an end. We'll cut into programming if necessary, but otherwise we're going to have a complete recap of this morning's and yesterday's weather, as well as a look at any of the possible damage we've had from these storms later on WW Louisiana starting at 4:30. For now, and for many of us, you can go to bed. I will be doing the same. Chief Meteorologist Chris Franklin.
This has been a severe weather alert from WWL Weather.